Welcome to today's video lecture. We are a continuation of our development unit. Today we're talking about the theories of Piaget versus Vygotsky. So we are covering module 3.4 part 2. So in the last video lecture, we talked about Jean Piaget and his work that he did with his children, looking at the cognitive development of children. Particularly looking at his own and what are children able and not able to do at each different age and stage of development. I also want to remind you back to our very first video lecture when we talked about those major themes in developmental psychology, kind of those different focuses that developmental theorists have. And I want to bring you back to the one that is called continuity and stages. Whether or not our development is just a continuous uphill process or whether it is stage-based, almost like stepping stones that you step up on a step. So when we look at Piaget versus Vygotsky, they very much argue on this theme. So Piaget's belief is that it's more of like a stepping stone, that no matter how much you try and teach a child to understand, say, something like conservation, until they're cognitively ready to understand it, you can't reinforce, teach, beg, try and get them to figure out that just because something changes shape doesn't mean it changes size. And so he very much thought it was like a stepping stone. In contrast, what you're going to learn about Vygotsky is Vygotsky's a little bit different. He believed it's kind of like walking up a ramp, and that we are slowly helping children learn and grow cognitively. And it is really the role of those that are around you, those that have more knowledge than you, that is helping you to be able to succeed in that particular area. So these two very much go head to head in what is it? Is it that we are not cognitively ready to understand something until a certain age, like a stepping stone? Or is it more we are constantly growing with the help of those who have more knowledge than us around us? So Vygotsky's theory. Vygotsky focused on something in his social learning theory called zone of proximal development. So he thought that when learning, when we're trying to increase our cognitive understanding or ability to do things, that children have a zone of proximal development. So if you look at this bullseye picture here, you'll see the A in the center. The A is stuff that learners can do without any help, without any support. Outside of that is the things that learners can do in that zone of proximal development with support. And outside of that is the stuff learners can't do even with support. So he very much focused in on the fact that children can learn. They can learn a lot more than we give them credit for, as long as they have the supports of those who have more knowledge than they do, as long as they are in that zone of proximal development. So he talked about the fact that scaffolding is something that people who are more knowledgeable need to give to children in order to allow them to show their knowledge, to grow their knowledge, to be able to solve problems, to be able to understand things. He very much has his foot in educational psychology. And so you've probably heard of the word scaffolding before, but a lot of in teacher development courses, we are taught how to scaffold. How can we get students to understand things that are outside of their capability to do by themselves, but with the support of kind of a stepping stone? How can we slowly introduce content? How can we maybe show content and then practice content together and then slowly release to students to be able to succeed at proving that they know something? So for example, like with AAQs, right? That by yourself, before you learned anything about it, by yourself, you were not able to do that. However, that's within your zone of proximal development, that if I can scaffold for you that skill of writing an AAQ, right? We first start with like talking about the content within that. And then we practice writing one together. And then we did one as a class. We've slowly been scaffolding until you on your own are going to be able to complete those AAQs and kill it with no support needed. And so that zone of proximal development is that ramp idea that he has, that we can all cognitively learn and understand things with the right supports around us. So once again, like I talked about the difference between Piaget and Vygotsky, Piaget very much thought that child can't step to the next level until they're cognitively ready to do so. And it's not until the ages of 6 or 7 till they're able to move to that next stage of cognitive development. Versus Vygotsky thought that it was just a slow ramp that we moved up, and that as long as we had a lot of scaffolding from adults around us who had more content knowledge than us, we would be able to develop and learn more cognitively on this kind of slow ramp process. When we also look at a difference between Piaget and Vygotsky, Piaget thought that biological development of cognitive abilities, parents aren't necessarily needed to do that, that it's really innate within us. It's our own biological development that allows us to be able to cognitively understand things, and that's why it's not until a certain age that we can get it. Again, it very much focused on the individual, and that we don't need parents or other knowledgeable people around for a child's thinking and learning to grow. In contrast, Vygotsky thought that it is paramount that children grow up around others who have more knowledge than they do in order for them to cognitively develop and to understand skills. And so very much, again, a difference between those two gentlemen. That is all I have for you today. I hope you have a wonderful day.